There have been plenty of questions all offseason about how Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman would be able to gel over the course of the offseason. Well, we have positive updates on their connection, all that and more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today and making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day and just a part of your day in general. Free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. And we are 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday. So we give you all the Ravens content. Plus, we do bonus episodes to go live after every single Ravens game. That does include the preseason. So we'll be going live after Friday's preseason opener against the Philadelphia Eagles. Then we also go live after every single piece of Ravens big news as well. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, whether you're in audio form or video form here on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As I mentioned there, we are less than 1 week away. Friday at the end of this week, so when the Ravens open up their preseason against the Philadelphia Eagles. We are so close. We're so close. And I'm so excited. We have a great week ahead here on Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody for being here again, whether you're an everydayer, whether it's your first time into the channel, or if you're somewhere in the middle. So we have a lot to talk about. Plus, just another fun fact here. We're officially 1 month to the day away from the Ravens' actual regular season opener against Kansas City. They open up on September 5th here today. It is August 5th. We have a lot to get into today, though. We have some training camp updates to get into over the weekend. We didn't do a bonus episode over the weekend. Felt kind of weird, honestly. I think I had gone for a lot of straight days doing bonus episodes and training camp updates, but there weren't necessarily a ton of big storylines. But the biggest storyline, we'll talk about it today here in the first segment, was Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman finding their connection. So we'll get into that and other training camp updates. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Tyler Linderbaum's injury a little bit here. Getting into some soft tissue stuff for him. Obviously, that is what it is. But what John Harbaugh had to say about his timeline and stuff along those lines. Then finally, we'll get into some more weekend winners, dive into more training camp updates from there, and talk a bit about what that means for potential roster spots. So, jam-packed episode as we usually have here on Locked On Ravens. So let's get into it now. First, again, Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman found their connection over the weekend during Saturday's practice. The team had off on Sunday. But this was the big news coming out of the weekend here. And, of course, that's the biggest storyline for today. You have Jamison Hensley saying that Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman, the highlight of the inter-squad practice was Lamar Jackson connecting with Rashod Bateman and that connection. So there was obviously a scrimmage that the Ravens had on Saturday. It was an inter-squad scrimmage. And, Lamar and Rashod Bateman kind of stole the show. Bateman had 4 catches for 61 yards here, according to Jamison, including 2 over 20 yards. So the connection was huge. And then just kind of diving more into Lamar's performance before going back to Rashod Bateman. Jamison's count, Lamar Jackson, 10 of 16 for 108 yards, including a 3-yard touchdown to Mark Andrews. But Jackson was upset at how one drive ended. He ended up throwing his helmet in the middle of the field, and that ended up drawing a flag. And honestly, that's nothing new. We know Lamar's passionate, even in practice. That is not necessarily a shock to me. Lamar is, although he's someone that, doesn't do everything perfect because no one does. He is a perfectionist. He wants everything to go right. He's a guy that if something does happen and it's not to his liking, he'll let it be known. And that's fine. I'm not dissing him for it. That's totally fine. But we do know that Lamar is super passionate about the game. And honestly, I like to see that passion. I like that. Some people don't for some reason. I don't necessarily know why. But for me, I like the passion of when something goes wrong. Everybody handles it differently. And Lamar is someone who wants everything to be so perfect and just executed the right way. that he will get passionate and do stuff like that. So that's something that we have seen from Lamar before, even just not in practice. But yeah, I think it's also interesting. I mean, look, 2 catches over 20 yards. We've talked about Lamar and Bateman and that connection last season and over the course of their careers, right? Where they just haven't been able to get on the same page. And we've kind of been talking about here on this show, if you're an everydayer, you know this, where Tez Walker, I think, could take some pressure off of Rashod Bateman and even Zay Flowers deep. Like, not that those guys can't do that, but I think that if you have specialized roles for some of these guys lower on the depth chart, like a Tez Walker being a deep threat who can go up and catch the ball, that can help Zay and Rashod Bateman focus on more of the shorter / more intermediate stuff. But that doesn't mean that I think the common misconception there is that, if Tez is the deep ball guy, no one else is getting deep passes. It's not true. That's not what's going to happen. Everybody will be able to eat with the deep ball, assuming that Lamar can throw those passes and the receivers can catch those passes, right? The connection both from Lamar and the receivers last year deep was just off. It was off for most of the season. It wasn't good for most of the season. That is one area that can unlock this Ravens offense. And so even to start this training camp, right, it was really weird in terms of Lamar and Rashod Bateman just not being able to get on the same page together, where Lamar was obviously out sick, and then Rashod Bateman had to miss some practice with some other injury. And it's just, they had never been able to connect. And then when they were on the field, there were some reports of, they're still working on it, still getting things down, which is natural. But this is a very positive step. They still have a long way to go. And obviously, Jess Rebeck here reports as well that they connected 4 times. And again, a lot of the reports coming out of camp here were that it looked good. Like, it looked like they had something. So that's the really big part of this. And again, it's not the be all end all. Like, just because they had this day on Saturday doesn't mean that, they're going to get the connection is there. It's back. No, they need to work on some other stuff here. But to be able to have that, by accounts, it was the best day that Rashod Bateman had. And it's a good sign. It's a really good sign. So I think for me, the big thing with Rashod Bateman, and we've talked about, look, I've said this so much on this show, is the balance of the offense. I'll read the stat off. I do every time we talk about this. The Ravens were first in rushing attempts last season. They were 30th in pass attempts. For some reason, people don't like to talk about Marquise Brown. But again, Marquise Brown was a huge part of the Ravens offense back when he was on the team. So Marquise Brown, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, those guys, they were those guys who would get 8 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets a game. Everybody else, when everybody else was healthy, those guys are getting 3, 4, maybe 5 targets. I think you need to be able to balance it out where you have Derrick Henry. You're a run-first team. Do not abandon that identity. But in order for Rashod Bateman to completely reach his potential, or at least get to as close to it as he can, this team needs to throw the ball more and get him the ball more, because it is hard for any player, not just Rashod Bateman, but it's hard for any player to get into a rhythm when there aren't as many targets coming their way as some other guys. Some guys can work with that. Some guys can get 2 targets a game, and that's their role. But Rashod Bateman is better than a 2-target-per-game player. And regardless of if you believe in him or not, I personally do, but regardless of if you believe in him or not, he's a player that does deserve to have opportunities to show whether he belongs or whether he doesn't. But in the sample sizes that we've seen, he gets open. Lamar just hasn't been able to find him, or Lamar will force throws when he shouldn't be to Bateman, and that makes the connection look worse. Like, it hasn't connected the way that it's needed to, and that has a lot to do with the health situation, honestly, for both guys. Lamar being injured some of those years. Obviously, Rashod Bateman's been injured for a lot of that time as well. It has never gotten the full, attention is not the right word. I would say it hasn't gotten the full capacity that it could have with training camp success and other success there as well. And apparently Bateman, Jameson mentioned the 2 over 20 yards. The last one apparently was a 30-yarder. He ran the route, made the catch, and then apparently he shook a defender into another one. So look, we know Bateman has that shiftiness to him. We know Bateman has that ability. Now it's for him just a matter of continuing to build off of what he's already built up, which again, has he built up a ton over the course of his career so far? No. And we can admit that. We can acknowledge that. But in my opinion, I think that, look, as long as you just stack days, every day doesn't have to be a good day. Every day doesn't have to be. But if you just continue to stack those practices and have enough of them under your belt by the time the season starts, and you have enough of a connection with Lamar there, that's the thing. They haven't been able to do this. They haven't been able to establish a connection in training camp together and have that consistency. So if this can be the year they do that, could be a very, very big year for Rashod Bateman. And that obviously helps Lamar Jackson and, of course, the entire offense as well. Coming up in the second part of the show, that we'll talk about Tyler Linderbaum and his injury, what John Harbaugh had to say, when we should expect him back, and a lot more. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And for me and a lot of other people as well, there are definitely self-care non-negotiables. And, maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it sometimes is hard to make time for it. When you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And therapy has so many different benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering yourself to become the best version of yourself. And it also isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma, it's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back, our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Allstrecker still here with you on this Monday edition episode. Really appreciate everybody again for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Be sure to make your second listen Locked On NFL. I do host that show over on Monday, so we go across our entire network. We talk about the biggest storylines throughout the league. Today, we talk Justin Herbert and his injury. We talked about DJ Moore. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins. So we have a lot over on Locked On NFL. Be sure to check that out and subscribe either wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube in video form. Now, concern over Tyler Linderbaum and his injury. So let's first do the general what happened here, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it because this happened on Friday. So Tyler Linderbaum was not present at Friday's practice. John Harbaugh spoke to the media after practice and ended up saying that he's dealing with a minor soft tissue injury. He didn't practice on Saturday as well. John Harbaugh actually said on Friday he'd be out for Saturday, but does expect him sometime this week to return to practice. But he also said that they're going to be patient with Linderbaum. And the Ravens have had a bunch of soft tissue stuff happen to them early in this training camp. But look, all teams are dealing with it, whether it is soft tissue stuff, other injuries, this, that, and the other. Now, the Ravens have already lost Malik Cam for the season, but other teams are dealing with other season-ending stuff and other soft tissue injuries as well. Like, this is not just a Ravens thing. The Ravens are not the only team that is dealing with this or just dealing with injuries in general and absences in general. But being cautious is the right thing to do. And really, ever since 2021, when J.K. Dobbins went down and Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters went down with those injuries in the preseason and towards the end of, right when the season was about to start, I think Baltimore has, and they have most definitely taken a deep dive into their strength and conditioning program, into how they train, and they are being extra cautious. They have been extra cautious with their guys, and that's what they should be doing, especially with a guy in Tyler Linderbaum who the thing that concerns me about offensive line absences, and this is not just a Linderbaum thing. In fact, he's the one that at least concerns me with. But the thing with offensive line absences, I'll take everybody back again to 2021, I believe it was, right when Ronnie Stanley was coming back from his ankle. And, they were inserting a bunch of new guys. They had signed Kevin Zeitler. He had to miss some time. Bradley Bozeman had to miss some time. Stanley was missing time. Like, everybody was missing time. And it was just a lot of mixing and matching, guys not being able to get consistent reps together. This team lost 60% of their line. So the right move is to rest Linderbaum and to be cautious and be careful with him. That is the 100% correct decision. But you do want to have him out there when you can. But when can he be out there? When he's 100% healthy. There's no reason to put him on the field right now. If he's not healthy, if he's dealing with something that's nagging or just he's uncomfortable and there's something going on, why would you risk it in an essentially meaningless practice for a Pro Bowler who has already established himself as one of the best, if not the best center in the league? That's not worth it. But the offensive line consistency is, some level of a, concern point for me. But the Ravens are already rotating guys in and out. Like, this isn't a season where, like, they knew they're starting 5 and they need to get reps with those 5. They have 3 competitions going on right now. Obviously, Angie Voorhees is the front runner for that left guard job. Roger Rosengarten's starting to get reps with the ones at that right tackle spot. The right guard position is really the uncertain spot where, and replacing Kevin Zeitler, is it going to be Ben Cleveland? Is it going to be Daniel Falele? Is another guy going to get an opportunity? I could maybe even see Josh Jones getting some level of an opportunity there. So for Linderbaum, it is not a concern about like consistency issues with him. Like, you can plug and play him. He's that good of a player. But I'm talking more for the younger guys who have the experience, or I guess the lack of experience. It's the experience for Linderbaum, lack of experience for the younger guys who haven't played next to him and are trying to get things down. It's such a luxury to practice next to a Tyler Linderbaum. So again, this doesn't seem like it's a major thing. I personally am not concerned over this. I'm not hitting any panic button or anything like that. I think he'll be back in due time, and that'll be that. But the correct move is to be cautious. And these soft tissue injuries, again, I'm not a doctor here, but based off of what I do know about soft tissue injuries, there are different grades. A grade 1, which I think based off of the recovery time, this is probably what Linderbaum has. If anything, it's probably, grade 1. That's a 1 to 2 week type recovery. And that's probably what it is. The grade 2s can take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. And then grade 3, you need, more treatment and consultation and whatnot. So just feels like it's a grade 1 based off the recovery time. And John Harbaugh saying, yeah, he'll miss Friday, he'll miss Saturday, he'll be back sometime next week. Feels like it's the grade 1 soft tissue stuff, but that stuff can be nagging. John Harbaugh also talked about how Deontay Hardy, the Ravens signing this offseason, going to be their primary returner, it looks like, this year. He's been dealing with a soft tissue thing that's been nagging him. And it's sometimes very tough to shake. Other guys have been dealing with soft tissue injuries. So there is definitely a soft tissue wave rolling through the Ravens right now. But again, to me, this just feels like more of a precautionary, hey, we're going to play super safe here. And that's what they should be doing. There is no reason to lose Tyler Linderbaum or make something that is minor a lot worse due to pushing him in practices. Like, practices are important, but they're not worth losing players over because you push them too hard due to injury. And I think that's something in the prior Ravens teams, particularly the Steve Saunders era, that a bunch of players did complain about, but they're past that. They have become a smarter team when training. And there's a lot more that goes into that, moving around practice times, nutrition stuff, this, that, and the other. But teams go through this. This is a natural thing. Obviously, it's never fun to hear a guy, especially a guy as talented as Tyler Linderbaum, go down with this. But I assume Patrick McCary is slotting in and fill it in the meantime, which is why, again, he's your super sub guy. It's the 1-for-1 replacement. He's a very talented player, and he deserves to start probably. And he would start on a lot of other teams. And he'd start on Baltimore too, I think, in some situations if they played like their most talented guys, which again, I think they should be playing their most talented guys. But McCary is that good as a player everywhere. You don't want to mess up the chemistry of the offensive line. And it's much better to have a 1-for-1 replacement in the case of an injury versus a 2-for-1 replacement where you're moving a starter over and then putting another starter in. That just gets complicated sometimes. So I think that's the reason. But I think McCary, again, if you're talking about that right guard job, if he's the most talented player, he should win it. And he certainly is, at least in my opinion. I think he should most definitely be starting for the Ravens at the right guard spot. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. Coming up in the final part of the show, though, we'll be talking about some more weekend winners from the training camp practices on both Friday and Saturday. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So in the MLB, Gunnar Henderson for the Orioles is in the MVP conversation, although I know it is between Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. right now. But if you want those MVP odds, head over to FanDuel. Or for the Ravens and Chiefs, they open up on September 5th. A month from today, Ravens open up as 2.5-point underdogs over on FanDuel. So if you like those odds, or maybe not, you can over to FanDuel as well. Head over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And this show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? We get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Khan at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things we'll quickly notice with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key by leveraging technology. DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked on listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline Empowering Legacies. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday. Again, really appreciate everybody being here, whether you are an everydayer, if it's your first time into the show, or if you're somewhere in between. We're actually coming up very quickly now, less than a week, on my 5-year anniversary of hosting this show. So it's been a crazy ride. I've been doing this since 2019. Obviously started off in audio form. We then added video form to the mix as well. So it's been an incredible journey. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow along in audio form if you like to listen to your audio podcast. We have you covered over there anywhere you get your shows. And if you're a video watcher, you can subscribe over on YouTube as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. So tell a friend, tell a family member if they're looking for Ravens coverage. We have them covered here on Locked On Ravens. Let's get into some weekend winners over the course of the weekend. Again, guys are making names for themselves. And I think one guy that ended up drawing a lot of praise was a running back. And Derrick Henry had his moments, but it wasn't him who I'm talking about. Owen Wright. Owen Wright seems to be the guy that a lot of people are talking about in terms of this guy who's maybe making a little bit of a push for a roster spot potentially. He ended up picking up 2 first downs on the day and it just feels like, based off of what we're hearing, he's in a rhythm. Now, where's a roster spot for him? If the Ravens keep 4 running backs, it could be that. Or if the Ravens decide that Rasheen Ali is not their guy and they'd rather keep Owen Wright, we have seen Eric DeCosta move off of draft picks rather quickly. So Ali needs to have a strong training camp in preseason. We know he has struggled with some issues. Now, more on Rashod Bateman, because there is more stuff that has been put out by media. There's been a lot of stuff concerning Bateman and just what his role is going to be. Obviously, as the wide receiver 2, essentially. But he ended up picking up a ball from, it was a little bit of a low throw from Lamar. He picked that up off the turf. It was still, in the air when he caught it. Obviously, that's what a catch is, right? But still, low ball from Lamar. Bateman ends up plucking it and moves the chains there. And then also, you just get a general crossing route over there, just a few yard gain there. And then he ended up looking for Bateman. He was going through his reads on the 3rd play and ended up getting a 15-yard play there. Then obviously the one we talked about in the first part of the show, where he ended up getting that 30 or right around 30-yard catch. So just a little more context into Rashod Bateman. As I mentioned, Derrick Henry also had a couple of touchdowns on the day. Obviously, he's able to work downhill, and he was able to find blocks. A guy that Derrick Henry is not necessarily known for his speed, but certainly has it, right? I think is an underrated part of his game. Kicked into that gear and ended up going to the end zone. So it's something where even if the offensive line is not playing at their best, Henry can still make something out of nothing, especially if he can find a block or two. Christian Kirkwood apparently had a great practice, and he made a couple of nice plays. You also have Ardarius Washington, who is a guy we've talked about a lot on this show. He's someone that was really good in coverage, and he ended up disrupting a couple of plays. Dayton Wade, we've talked about him all offseason. Him and Kadir Esmail have been the two undrafted pass catchers that have been making names for themselves. Dayton Wade had a couple of nice plays. Charlie Kohler had a good block on one of Derrick Henry's runs, so that was great as well. And there are always some false start penalties that go on. So that's nothing new, although I think it was only 2 on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. They've had practices with 4, with 5. So there's a lot there as well. But, Greg Lewis talked about Rashod Bateman too, right? He was up at the podium, the wide receiver coach. He said it was great to see Bateman build a rapport with Lamar. That's what they're working towards. Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman, they have a shot this season to help each other's stock. We know Lamar's stock is high already. It's not about Lamar's stock. But in terms of Bateman, his stock is generally very low right now. He is a high risk, high reward type of player where we know the talent is there, but can he stay healthy? Can he shake off those injuries that have been plaguing him for these last couple of seasons? But Lamar can get him right, and Bateman can get Lamar right. This is a mutually beneficial partnership for both of these guys, where with Bateman's ability as a route runner, with his ability to be a 3-level wide receiver when asked, he just has to be able to stay healthy and get that chemistry early. If the chemistry comes early and you continue to build it, it's almost like preseason or spring training or whatever you want to call it. We saw in baseball, there was this big deal about players. They weren't there for spring training. And obviously baseball is a different sport than football, but they had to go through their spring training during the first 2 months of the season because they really struggled. And now we're starting to see some of those guys get back on track because now they're done with their warm-up. Now they're in the real thing. So when Bateman was missing all this time and when Jackson was missing all this time, it was, well, they can't get their chemistry together. And especially with Bateman missing time in training camp, it was, well, this is when you build that up early. And then Bateman comes back, but now you have to work through that. And then one of the other guys. So it's a whole big thing. But to me, the big part of this is hopefully Rashod Bateman can stay healthy, get on track. And the Ravens offense is at its best when Rashod Bateman is playing up to his ability. He has ability. Can he bring all that to fruition this year? That is the biggest storyline for the Ravens, or at least one of the biggest storylines for them heading into the 2024 season. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, be sure to subscribe, like the video form. You can obviously follow along and subscribe in audio form as well. I'm going to get back here tomorrow. More Ravens content. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.